We hear about the large-scale effects of climate change all the time now. We're hearing reports of flooding, landslide, tsunamis, and the increasing number and strength of hurricanes and tornadoes across the globe. We see footage of polar ice caps melting and glaciers receding, but how is climate change affecting us in our daily lives? In this video series, we look at some of the local effects of climate change here in our own backyard.
In recent years and recent months, we certainly have been inundated with information and issues surrounding climate change from a global perspective. We've heard of floods, we've heard of droughts, we've heard of snowstorms in places that they have never seen snow before. So while it might seem overwhelming to tackle global solutions, it is possible to look at climate change and to deal with climate change from a local perspective by finding local solutions. In our watersheds at the Hamilton Conservation Authority, we are looking at ways of dealing with extreme events, and certainly we have seen extreme events in the Hamilton area, including flooding, very intensive storms, windstorms as well, and also significant erosion resulting from some of these events. Watersheds are those areas that have been defined by their streams or local rivers, and they are the lands that drain to these significant water bodies. For example, our watersheds in the Hamilton area drain parts to Cootes Paradise and then to Hamilton Harbour and ultimately ending up in Lake Ontario. The watersheds to the west of us, for example in the Grand River watershed, will travel through the Grand River and then ultimately empty to the Lake Erie system. In terms of our work, we want to look at some of the functions and features associated with our watersheds so that we could come up with local solutions. To give you an idea of what's been happening within our local area, in 2011 we experienced a number of extreme events. These included a very wet spring and associated flooding with local microburst storms that resulted in extreme floodings in different locations. We also experienced very strong wind events that, in the case of Christie Conservation Area, large trees were actually blown down during one of these storms. Later on in the summer of 2011, we also experienced extreme drought conditions where the Conservation Authority did have to alert users of our water systems to try to cut back to deal with the low water conditions. In the series of interviews and videos that this session is based on, you'll be hearing about various local impacts on various aspects of our ecosystem. It is hoped that we can then go on and show you some examples of what you can do in your area and on your own to be able to adapt to the conditions of climate change.
Here at Westfield Heritage Village in Rockton, we've been doing a maple syrup program for the month of March for about 18 years now. And we're noticing a bit of a trend in that we're getting less snow cover on average during the winter than we used to get. And it does make a difference to the trees and how much sap run you get and how much maple syrup you get over the season. In a maple tree, what makes a maple tree different is it has a lot of sugar in its sap. And that sugar is coming from starch that was stored inside the woody cells of the tree. Now, when that starch is converted to sugar, it creates little bubbles of carbon dioxide in each living woody cell of the tree. So at night, when the sap freezes inside the tree, those bubbles disappear into solution. And the next day, when the tree warms up, the bubbles reappear and create a spike in internal pressure in the tree. And that's what makes maple trees bleed when you drill into them much more than other trees. They've got a very high fluid pressure compared to other trees, and it's because of this carbon dioxide bubbles from all the starch they're converting. Now, if they do this starch conversion gradually over a long time, the internal pressure in the tree stays fairly low and you don't get much sap out of them when you tap them. That's why when you tap a tree on the southern limit of the maple's range, like you can grow maple trees all the way down to Kentucky, Tennessee. You tap those trees in the spring, you hardly get a drop out of them. because they're running on a much lower pressure. They've been gradually digesting their starch over a long time. You tap a tree in northern Quebec where they have to do the whole job in 2 weeks, and their internal pressure is very, very high. And you get a big sap run, and you can make a lot of maple syrup in that situation. So the truth of it is a long spring is a bad thing for maple syrup. You want spring to come on hard and fast, and then the trees will run with a lot of sap in a short period of time, and that lets you harvest efficiently and collect a lot of sap and make a lot of syrup. But it's got to be a spring that comes on fast, like a Quebec spring where you go from 3 feet of snow to black flies in 4 weeks. That's a maple syrup spring. This kind of stuff here where there's no snow cover and you've had thaw cycles from early February right up through the spring, the trees are done most of their work before you even tap them. For the program, our problem is we fix the dates of our program before we know what the winter was like. So in future, what we may have to do is bump our program farther back and start it in the 3rd week of February rather than waiting for the 1st week of March, because our maple sap run's going to start earlier if this trend continues. We're going to have to move to tapping more towards the middle of February and not wait for March.
Okay, here we are at Valens Conservation Area, right in Flamborough, and I can tell you we're reaching mid-February. There is absolutely no snow here. The ice is less than 6 inches thick, and I've never seen that happen here before in 24 years of me being here at this park. And I could take us back just 1 year ago. We had tons of snow for our Ice Fest activity, and we had over 14 inches of ice. So the only thing I can do is throw out the old cliche, is what a difference a year can make. Normally here at Valens, we're sitting here with great ice conditions for guys coming out here ice fishing. This year, not to be the case, and I'm not sure if I could contribute at all to global warming or climate change, but in 2012, it's got a lot of people here raising their eyebrows. Ice fishing this year clearly is not in southern Ontario around the Hamilton area. Valens is closed, Binbrook is closed, Pinehurst and a good portion of the Grand River conservation areas are also closed. The nearest ice fishing that is available to us right now, parts of Lake Simcoe, Cooks Bay, and the eastern shoreline, or perhaps even Lake Nipissing is also open, but you've got to go north if you want to find ice fishing in 2012. Regarding safety, clearly all ice there is some risk always involved, and we want to let everybody know here in the greater Hamilton area to stay clear and stay off the ice in this area. It is not safe. Okay, well, our winter program here at Valens is really taking the hit. And it's the ice fishermen, of course, the easiest group that we could focus on, but there's other groups too. We have our ice skaters, pond hockey, cross-country skiing. Everybody is taking the hit off this year. The only one area I could say is a complete winner, and that's going to be the fish here, because the fish have not been bothered at all, and they'll have a great spring coming later this year.
We're here in the Dundas Valley Conservation Area in Dundas, Ontario, and this is the home of the Hamilton Conservation Authority's outdoor environmental education programs. And we've noticed a lot of change in terms of weather and climate this year in particular. This has been one of the least snowiest winters. You can look around you, there's not much snow on the ground. And we've been noticing the behavior of certain creatures out there that are making it seem a lot more like spring and a lot less like winter. Now here we're in February, but in January we were hearing spring calls from birds like chickadees. This week, which is February, we're actually hearing calls from robins and nuthatches and woodpeckers, and these are all the spring sounds that we're hearing. We've even had reports of turkey vultures and bald eagles on the move, and this is most unusual for this time of year. So the weather is affecting our ecosystem here in the Dundas Valley, it's affecting the wildlife, and it's affecting how we carry out the programs that we do for our outdoor education programs. We're finding that we don't have very much snow on the ground. We've had to cancel our snow-related programs. We have a concern that this is going to make it difficult for some animals and easy for others. So on the positive side, you've got the coyotes and the owls and hawks that have some very happy hunting, but you've got the mice and the meadow voles that don't have that protective layer of snow to insulate them from the cold and keep them warm. People tend to forget that snow has little air pockets to keep those creatures warm, and if it's minus 20 outside, well, that's what that meadow vole or field mouse is going to feel like. They're going to be feeling that temperature at minus 20, not warmed up with the layer of snow at around minus 1. It's a lot warmer for them. So we're going to find certain animals will benefit, others will have a much tougher time of it. And with this lack of snowfall on the ground, we're also concerned about what impact that's going to have on the streams and creeks this year. So kids themselves are telling us that something isn't right. Things are unusual. They are noticing it. They're coming out here in the dead of January and February wearing running shoes, no mitts, no hats, and well, it might be easy to get around, but it's not a typical winter. Because it's been such a mild winter, I'm finding that the trail conditions, the ground conditions are very soft and soggy. And as soon as we leave a trail, that means we're causing some environmental impact to the ground. So any overwintering areas for salamanders and other animals are going to be put at risk. We may be trampling some of the spring wildflowers that are coming up. In fact, we have noticed the buds of spring wildflowers coming up in February. So when the frost comes, that's going to affect things. I think one of the things we have to do is encourage people to be aware that their footprints are making a difference out here, to encourage them to stay on the trails, find out a little bit more about what they can do themselves to reduce their footprint on the earth, because the more we use our cars, the more garbage we generate, the more products we buy, the more carbon we're putting back into the atmosphere. And all of these things contribute to climate change and to global warming. And we're asking kids to come up with solutions to what they can do, what their families can do. And that's encouraging, because some of them are taking it very much to heart.
We're here at Christie Lake Conservation Area, and you can see behind me the results of some of the extreme weather we've been having. This microburst occurred in the summer of 2011 and resulted in a number of trees within the park and in the surrounding area being destroyed. This is one example of extreme weather that's a result of climate change. Our data has shown that temperature and extreme weather have been increasing. Subtle increases in temperature may seem less obvious as a cause of extreme events, but they can have similar impacts. Consider the winter we've had this year. It's been milder, and therefore most of the precipitation we've had this winter has been in the form of rain, resulting in very little snowpack. The reduction of snowpack can lead to both drought and flooding. It can lead to drought because without the snowpack melting slowly during the spring, we don't have enough water to fill up natural wetlands that store water throughout the spring and into the summer months when it's typically much drier. We also don't have the freshet flows to fill up the reservoir that we use to augment flows in Spencer Creek during the summer. A reduced snowpack can also cause flooding. Snow has two important functions. First, it insulates the ground, keeping the underlying soil from freezing. Secondly, when precipitation in the form of rain falls, it can absorb a lot of that precipitation as the snowpack ripens. If we don't have that snowpack, the ground can freeze if we do get a cold snap of weather, and any rain that falls onto that frozen ground will run off immediately into area creeks because it can't infiltrate through the frozen soil. So if we get a big amount of rain in a short period of time, this can cause large flows in our streams and can lead to flooding downstream. As an agency that has extensive monitoring throughout the watershed, HCA is in the perfect position to monitor the effects of climate change in our watershed. Going forward, HCA and its partners will play a vital role in advising the public through such things as our flood forecasting and low water response programs.
I guess we first start off saying that climate is a very essential part to an ecosystem, as many species have adapted to the regional climate within this area. Climate change in itself can actually alter an ecosystem, whether it be adverse or whether it be beneficial really depends on the species. So you can look at the distribution the distribution of species, and whether or not it's invasive or it's native is whether or not it's beneficial, whether it's considered to be an altering or a negative effect on our ecosystem. So if we're looking at an invasive forest plant species that's say like garlic mustard, so we have a warm winter season, it's able to have a larger distribution rate throughout the ecosystem. That would generally affect that ecosystem compared to, say, a more valuable species that would have a benefit for its distribution to expand. The important part to understand is that to look at trends and to look at how climate change is altering our actual ecosystem. So by doing that, we've been trying to incorporate our monitoring program both in our aquatic and our terrestrial. So we're looking at our terrestrial monitoring program, which is a long-term program, as well as our aquatic program, and looking at trends and trying to understand if there is how these species are adapting, looking at targeted species and trying to understand the patterns that we could be looking forward to in the future.
So we're here today at Hamilton City Hall, and you might wonder what climate change has to do with being in a city hall with all the offices and that sort of thing. Well, it turns out that the councillors here throughout the city deal with all kinds of flooding problems, with the increased rain that we're seeing with climate change, the more drastic storms throughout the year, including the winter time, and it's an issue that affects everybody throughout the city of Hamilton. And here in Hamilton, understanding that and really saying, this climate change thing is very real, and it's costing us money here at the city, and it's affecting all of our residents and other species throughout the city. We're one of the first communities in Ontario to sign a climate change charter. And that charter is a document that people have signed throughout the city of Hamilton, all different agencies and organizations, as well as many individuals as well. And the interest there is to commit to the idea of being a real problem that we all need to work together to solve, and then to commit to various actions that we'll each take. In a moment I'll refer to some of those actions. But if you're looking at this from another community as well, we encourage you to prepare your own climate change charter, and we're here at the Hamilton City Hall to help you with that. And of course, if you're a Hamiltonian, throughout our municipality, we encourage you to actually sign the charter yourself as an individual and take personal action towards climate change, which will help us at the Hamilton Conservation Authority implement our very own climate change strategy we have, working in all the different watersheds throughout the municipality of Hamilton. Well, the Hamilton Climate Change Action Charter is a document that commits people to taking action on climate change. I just wanted to take the opportunity to read out some of the actions that we want people to take, and you may want to take yourself. The first one is keep informed. Information about climate change is continually emerging, new scientific data almost every day, it seems, and to stay on top of that is important for all of us as we understand the issue, take action, and share our thoughts with others. The second action to take is to establish a baseline. With greenhouse gas emissions, it's very important to know what our current emissions are, and as we take tangible actions, leaving the car at home, taking various actions to turn down the heat and become more energy conservation minded throughout our lives, we'll want to know how that affects the greenhouse gas emissions. So keep track of what the emissions are so we can measure the reductions over time. The next one, number 3, is to set targets. Keep track, as I mentioned just a moment ago, but what target are we working towards in all parts of our lives, whether it be climate change or other things. In my case, losing weight. We need to set the target and to be able to measure how we're doing towards that target. The fourth action is to take personal responsibility and collaborate with others to make a difference with reducing greenhouse gases here in Hamilton. And that is very tangible actions you make in your home and in your daily lives, your way of living. It can also be committing to educating others about the issue and encouraging others to act. The fifth action item is to report and celebrate annually. This is all doom and gloom, sometimes climate change, but it's very important that we celebrate the achievements that we're making. In this case, Hamilton developing its own climate change charter was a celebration for us. October is Hamilton's Climate Change Action Month, and we have events throughout that month to celebrate our activities. The last action we've listed under the Charter is to engage, educate, and involve. Education about climate change and its impacts promotes public understanding and encourages us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and become more resilient over time as the climate changes. So that's the actions that we have here in Hamilton. Of course, not all the actions that you might want to take. There's lots of others that you could dream up yourself, but those are the ones that we're taking action on here in Hamilton. So to learn more about what you can do to improve climate change issues here in Hamilton, please visit the City of Hamilton website and look under the term climate change or greenhouse gas emissions, and you'll get a full understanding of the actions you can take, what's already being done, and organizations you can join up with to make a difference. Thank you.